alcoholic. Just to give you some idea of my warped sense of humor, I wanted to come up and get a white chip, and you all would have gone. I do want to congratulate the Vast Group on their 35th anniversary, or since everything is one day at a time, their 12,775th day, somewhere close to that. I found it a little bit ironic or interesting that 35 years ago I came to this area and started work at Sand Hills Community College in August. So this is my 35th anniversary in the area at Sand Hills Community College. This is my first speakers meeting that I've been to. I have been to other meetings, and some of you have shared so much I thought it turned into a speaker meeting. I am in the habit of talking to large groups. Just a little bit of my background. I am a college professor at Sand Hills Community College. I've taught music there for 35 years. I lecture, I test, I'm in charge. I am a performing musician, I'm a percussionist, which is sort of a drummer, but I can read notes. I've worked with the North Carolina Symphony, I've played Broadway shows, musicals, so I'm used to being in front of large groups. Folks, this crowd scares the hell out of me. You know, before I got into AA, as I would have prepared for this, I would have thought, what can I do to impress you? After being in AA, what can I do to possibly help you in your recovery? I will talk toward the end about the changes that have taken place. But it is not so scary standing in front of you where maybe there's something I can say or something I can share that will help you in your individual recovery. My story is extremely uneventful and boring. It put me to sleep when I was preparing. Seriously, I got nothing. I mean, when I hear some of you share the colorful stories you have in your drinking careers, I have done no jail time. I've never been arrested. I've had 3 fender benders, never been charged or whatever. I've had 4 moving violations. I'm still married to the same woman. I've never been fired. I mean, I kept thinking, what do I have interesting to share with you? And then I realized the point is to share my story. That's all I got. The last drink I had was October 27th, 2012. I count my sobriety date to be October 28th, 2012. So I have 5 years, 7 months, and 4 days, or 1 day at a time, 2,104 days sober. To many of you, that's a lot less, and to some of you, it's a little bit more. But those are my 2,104 days of sobriety. And I would like to achieve 2,105. I drank for 38 and a half years. A little bit about my family history. Didn't think much about it at the time, but my father's side has a long tradition of alcoholics. Probably the most iconic story is my Uncle Bobby. Growing up, Bobby always seemed to be having a good time. I had a chance to babysit for Bobby and his wife, Bonnie, and Bonnie always had to take me home. Couldn't quite figure that out. Bobby had it all. He had his own business, and Bonnie was a knockout. At 14, she was an old woman, probably 28 or 30, you know, those old women. But at 14, she was gorgeous, and I thought, he's got it all going on. My Uncle Bobby died in a seed bag hotel in downtown Oshkosh, Wisconsin with nothing. And my father tells a story that he went through treatment I think you referred to it as taking the cure. Really? 4 times. One day, Uncle Bobby came to my dad and said, I want you to buy my car. And he said, why? He said, because I don't want to continue to drink and drive, and I'm not going to stop drinking. He lost everything. It didn't hit me until I started to struggle with alcoholism. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My father was not an alcoholic, but I attribute that to my mother, who used to moderate his drinking. If he would have more than 1 cocktail or glass of wine, she would be all over his ass. There's been a few times where she would say, Dick, that's your second drink. Okay. So it does run in my family, but I am not going to say that that is the cause. I will get to mine is self-inflicted. So drinking, my high school drinking, I grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Yes, Oshkosh by God. Brandy is a drink of choice up there. If anyone orders brandy, it's like you must be from Wisconsin. Go Packers. Drinking age was 18 at the time, which meant you started drinking at 16. Because I was a musician, I played in a band, and we started playing. I was going to avoid this, but I might as well. It's Wisconsin. I played in a trio, accordion, bass, and drums. Yes, I played with an accordion. Which one of my favorite stories is we were playing at a wedding reception, and this drunk guy came up and said, can you guys play Stairway to Heaven? I don't know why I had the forethought, but I turned to him and I said, you want to hear Stairway to Heaven on the accordion? And he said, never mind. 16, we were playing in bars, and of course, I needed an ID. Things were different back then. We had high school IDs, and they were in these little plastic, sealed things. Well, what you would do is you would open them up, put them in a typewriter, and type a fake birth date on them, and put them back in. And that was sufficient. Okay? We were playing one time, and someone, I don't remember exactly, someone busted me or told the bartender that I wasn't 18 yet, and I couldn't play in this bar anymore, and I had to be kicked out. Well, so the leader of the band had an idea. The next time we played that bar, it was my birthday, and I had just turned 18. We bought everybody around to drink, and I was good from then on. Started drinking at 16. College, drank a little bit. Actually, on campus, we had a bar. Our mascot was the Vikings, and so we had a Viking room, and I would drink. I can only think early on about 3 or 4 times that I was to the point where I couldn't play a job, couldn't set up my drums or whatever. But for the most part, I just kind of kept functioning and moving on. Working years, I drank. I was a functional drunk, and I really disliked that term. And I've thought a lot about it. And maybe what happened is I had enough stuff to do that I could somehow moderate or control my drinking. In other words, I could still function. I could arrange my schedule. I did have the luxury of having a self-imposed schedule. I was department chair. I could determine when my classes met, what days, and so I could decide that I would take Fridays off and I would be done every day at 2. I had that luxury of schedule, and in hindsight, that allowed me to continue in my alcoholism for a really, really long time. I did not have the situation that a lot of people have, in that you have to show up at 8 o'clock, 7:30, and there's someone there, and they can smell your breath or whatever. I was a functional drunk, probably because of convenience. I was able to still drink fairly early in the morning, fairly early in the day, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then I could pass out and still function. After I joined AA, I asked my kids if they thought I was an alcoholic, and they said, no, you were sort of a functioning drunk. That's the way they saw it. Because I didn't get divorced, I didn't get arrested, I didn't lose anything financially. I'll talk about what I did lose, and to me it was a lot more valuable than those external things. When I started drinking, it was not the magic elixir that I've heard some of you have experienced. In other words, I've heard people share that, ever since I took the first drink, it was magic. And it wasn't magic to me. I mean, I drank. I grew up in Wisconsin, everybody drinks, and it was just kind of a social thing. I equated drinking with fun, and it took me a really, really long time to figure out it wasn't the drinking that was the fun part. It was all the other things. So, I do have not only a sobriety date, but I became an alcoholic date. It was December 31st, 1999 in Charleston, South Carolina. We were with a group of people, and we were going to drink. It was New Year's Eve in Charleston. It was the millennium. All the computers were going to crash because of the 2K. We were going to drink, but I snuck away from the group to go to a liquor store and buy a pint or so of booze and put it in my coat jacket, just in case. And I thought, damn, that's an alcoholic. I didn't care the next 11.8 years or the next 4,317 more days. Just kept going. My story really changes July 30th, 2011. I had been working at the college for 32 serviceable years with the state. And at that time, after 30 years with the state of North Carolina, you pretty much retire, your multipliers are used up, and it's kind of the thing to do. You retire from the state at 30 years. And then you could go back. So I retired after 32 years, and due to the IRS, I had to sit out for 6 months before I could return to work. My wife was working, so I had 6 months by myself, alone. So, remember I started drinking about 3 o'clock in the afternoon? No need to wait for that. 12 o'clock's not bad, is it? Don't people have cocktails at lunch? Maybe it's brunch. 10 a.m. For 6 months, I stayed drunk and was drinking vodka out of a bottle at 7:30 in the morning in the shower. I didn't think I had a problem. Doesn't everybody do that? Isn't that perfectly normal, rational behavior? And of course, my wife wasn't around, and so, if I could moderate it enough, I could probably sober up enough to at least be somewhat functional when she walked through the door. But it was those 6 months that I attribute to I had nothing to stop me from becoming a true, full-out alcoholic. Well, after 6 months, I returned to work. Sometime in January 9th, 2012, to resume my teaching responsibilities. Couldn't stop. Trying. So then it became smoke and mirrors and deception and lies. And what I did at that point is there was one thing that mattered in my life, and that was to protect my addiction at all costs. At all costs. Was my moral compass askew? Did I lose my morality? Could I discern between right and wrong? Those were all still intact, but they were low priorities because I wanted to drink. So, I pulled it off pretty well. I was able to essentially function for, I don't know, maybe the next 10 months. I tried to regain control. And it did start to catch up with me. I don't know, but I'm going to say this out of humor. You know, my wife did not enjoy threesomes, me and Jim Beam and her. Me and Jack Daniels and her. I just couldn't figure it out why me being intoxicated didn't turn that woman on. Go figure. The point of that story was my relationship with my spouse suffered. And in her defense, her coping mechanism was not to discuss it. In other words, if I wanted to stay drunk, she had enough sense to realize no amount of nagging, no amount of bitching, no amount of, in other words, I was going to have to figure it out. Did she make it clear she was unhappy? Yes. But it was not her job to get me sober. She just had to deal with it until I figured out what the hell was going on. Or, if it continued, she would have to make other arrangements. Okay? So, there were rumors at work. I think he smelled alcohol on his breath, you know. I had dental work done. That was the problem. Nobody got that? You've never used that? I became a mean drunk. You know, I think that's kind of the progression. You know, I didn't start out at 16 thinking, when I grow up, I want to be an alcoholic. And you know, one of my life's ambition is to speak at the vast group's 35th anniversary. You know, then I know I've arrived. No, I mean, I was kind of a happy drunk, social drunk. As I say, kind of didn't get in trouble and was able to kind of manage it. And then it turned really, really dark. The last drink I had was October 27th. It was not, it wasn't like a hangover or anything like, it wasn't like some epiphany. I woke up October 28th, not in the big bed, and thought, this is it? I spent every damn day when I woke up thinking, how can I pull this off? I was drinking a fifth of vodka every damn day. Every day. Now, I'm not like totally stupid. I mean, there are medical complications. I'm thinking, you know, how long before we go to the doctor and there's the things are not looking well? I said I never got a DUI. I did not say I never drove drunk. That was just a matter of time. I bought a car one time to see if the center console could fit the big plastic bottle of vodka. I changed cars to accommodate my drinking. And there's a reason red Solo cups are not clear. So that was my epiphany. And you know something? My story is not a made-for-television. My story is not a Days of Wine and Roses. I mean, there's no lead actors or actresses. But what doesn't matter how I got there, I believe my moment of clarity is what a lot of you have shared, in that you woke up and said, this has got to stop. I thought God, of my understanding, kept me alive this long, gave me a whole bunch of stuff. A wife that didn't say, screw you and leave. I mean, stuff. I have all of this stuff. And my one objective in life is to think, how can I drink today without getting in trouble? I was pouring vodka in glasses thinking, shit, pardon my language, but if you want my story, you got to think what's going through my head. I don't want to do this. I don't want another drink. I sort of tried to stop. I know a lot of you thought, like, I'm going to, like, really, really stop. I stopped for a while, enough for the noise to sort of diminish. But I was not one to make all the promises. That's kind of not my story. I'm really, really sorry. I'll buy you flowers, and I'm not going to do that. That's not part of my story. For one, my wife, if you will, enabled me because she didn't bring it up. She didn't talk to me, but we were not confrontational about it. And again, I was able to pull it off because of my job and work responsibilities. I could schedule it. And I had enough financial resources where it wasn't like I was, having to find money. Oh, I was hiding money, And I started drinking top shelf stuff, because life's too short to drink bad alcohol. Unless you drink a lot of it. 20 bucks to get me a small bottle or a big bottle, I'm going with a big bottle. If you mix it with something, what difference does it make? So, October 28th, I said, I have got to stop this. I had no idea what the hell to do. So I went and I saw a counselor at the college, and it was Randy, and I said, Randy, I'm drinking way too much. I think I'm a drunk, alcoholic. What next? And his advice to me at the time was, go see your physician. Let's just see how screwed up and what kind of damage you got going on. So I made an appointment with my doctor, and I went. And the good news is I still had a liver and it was still functioning. The bad news was it's really starting to complain. So, and then he said, you need to go talk to somebody. So I went and I kind of spoke with a therapist, and talked to him for a while, and guess what he suggested I consider doing? Try AA. Now there's another aspect of my story which I'm a little hesitant to share, but I have a son who has gone through recovery. And I tell my kids I will pay for their first lawyer and their first recovery. After that, they're on their own. I paid for 2 recoveries. The only one that worked so far, he's been sober over 2.5 years now, is the one he paid for. The one he arranged. That was one lesson I learned, and I was already in AA. That was very valuable, because what's he doing for his recovery? And so far, the only one that's worked for him is the one he arranged for and the one he paid for. So, my son is in addiction, and being in AA, I was concerned that I would go to AA meetings that he would be at. I don't want to share stuff, Oh, my wife is sure crabby today, and he's like, that's my mother. Well, and I think I brought that up to the counselor, and the counselor had enough wisdom to say, you realize there's more than one meeting. Who would have thought? And another aspect, that's going to keep me away from an AA meeting. In other words, how serious am I about my recovery if I'm going to let something like that worry about, whether my son will be there or not? And in the 5 or so years, I've only been to 2 meetings with him. I think if he was sharing his story, he would probably say, one of my concerns about AA is I didn't want to go to a meeting with my dad. I get that. And then I started reading books. No, I didn't read any AA-approved literature at the start. I read Thinking Simply About Addiction by Sandor and Addiction and Grace by Gerald May. The thinking simply about addiction, for me, it answered a lot of questions as to what the heck is going on. Why can't I stop? I had been fairly successful. I should be able to manage this. I should be able to come up with a plan, a workaround, some kind of a solution, And it literally brought me to my knees. And without going into too much detail, he referred to addiction as an automatism, something that is very, very deep down in the brain that your body will do regardless of whether you want to or not. And he used the analogy of swimming. Once you learn how to swim, if you are thrown in the deep end, you can say, I'm not going to swim. No. I gave that up. I told my wife I'm not going to swim no more. And your mind and body will say, wrong. It's kind of like breathing. I'd like everyone to try and hold your breath so that, until you die. See what I'm getting at? The thing about alcoholism that I understood, that worked for me, and my understanding, is why did I keep drinking when I didn't want to? Because my body was saying, we need more of this. And so I would put it down for a while. And one of my concerns, and I'm going into a possibility of a relapse, is my brain still says, this is really, really good stuff. Why do people go right back to where they were when they... I haven't experienced that, but I think there's kind of a common thread. People say when I relapsed, within a matter of weeks, I was right back to where I was when I stopped 12 years ago. Which is sidebar, when I hear you people tell me stories you've had a decade of sobriety and then you go back to drinking, I keep thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Did you learn nothing? Okay. Well, that's not true. But it's like a diet. You're not supposed to stop eating because what the body does is it says, this fool is not eating. And so what does it do? It burns all of the muscle, and it says, we are going to keep fat because we don't know if this clown's ever going to eat again. Okay? Well, what my brain is going to do, as soon as I have one drink, it's going to say, this jerk, he may end up going back to AA. We got a window here. And I really think that's what happens. That's the automatism. My brain was conditioned where it basically became the number one priority. And so for me, that is the condition of a relapse, because if I start, my brain is going to say, we're not stopping again this time. And in case we do, we're going to get as much as we can as soon as we can. And that's going to be off to the races. The other one, the addiction and grace, talk more about the spiritual aspect of addiction. And I remember when my son was stealing money and doing all the stuff that you can imagine from the parent standpoint while someone was in addiction. And I remember my wife asking me, does he not know the difference between right and wrong? I said, he knows exactly the difference. It doesn't matter. There's one thing he wants. And I was the same way in my addiction. I started AA, and I don't know if I got... I asked Michael, what do you do at a speaker's meeting? He says you have to speak. And I said, for like how long? He says like the whole time. You may be getting out of here early, which probably puts me in the category of, we love that guy, let's have him back next time. Yeah. Being in the classroom is kind of like, the lecture's almost over and the professor says, are there any questions? And everyone looks at one another saying, damn it, don't anyone ask a question. We're out of here. I came into AA, and I remember I got a welcome pack. And I started reading the literature. I had all the answers really soon. Yeah. You know, I think with some careful editing, you could get those 12 steps into 9. You know, a couple commas here and there. You know, some are a little wordy. A couple of those chapters I think I could have, you know, combined and cut down. I had it all figured out, and I was cured. I was in AA, and I had 9 days. I haven't had a drink in 9 days. Where is the parade? You know, and I'd tell my wife, you know, take out the garbage. I haven't had a drink in 9 days. Nobody cares. Because my social circle did not change that much. It has considerable amount since I stopped drinking, but that's for any number of reasons besides just drinking. I was really, really concerned when I got into AA, what was I going to say when I went to a place where they serve alcohol? Would you like a beer? How about something to drink? And I would say, no, I'm an alcoholic. That's not what they asked. They asked me if I'd like a drink. And you know, there are people who are not here tonight, not members of AA, that when asked, would you like a drink, just simply say, no. It was so intense at the beginning. You know, and I get it. You know, the 30-day chip, you know, if you people had any compassion, you'd have a 31-day chip. You'd have a 32-day chip. Yeah, I mean, there's some groups where you don't get like 6 months. It's like, damn, give them 2 30 days. I mean, make change. Came into AA, started reading the literature. I kind of viewed it as studying for the GRE or some kind of exam. You know, I thought there'd be a test on it, and I thought the quicker that I understood how the program worked, the quicker I would be healed. I must confess, I did not start in AA to stop drinking. I just wanted to drink like normal people. You know, I thought maybe you could teach me some tricks as to how to pull it off. You know, it's like, well, I haven't had a drink in 19 years. No, you just haven't got caught in 19 years. I remember telling someone I did not care for the first step. I was powerless over alcohol, but this next part in my life had become unmanageable. Folks, remember, you know, I didn't lose anything externally. I mean, how can you tell me that my life has become unmanageable? I had no clue how unmanageable my life was. And that's taken me a really long time. I thought when I came in, I was going to get all those other kind of things back. I could maybe consider one day going back to drinking in safety, stop the noise, I could manage it, I could control it better. Maybe I overreacted. Keep coming back, it works if you work it. I think now, what I'm sharing at 5 years, how different it will be at 10. I think now at 5 years, how different it was when I first started. I'm sure when I would share, people would think, oh, thank you. You have 32 days of sobriety. Thank you for telling us how it works. Thank you for having the answers. Thank you for explaining. You know, it's really, really changed. And one of the things that has been keeping me sober, it will turn out the same. That is the one thing that is keeping me sober. It will turn out the same. If I start drinking because I am an alcoholic, if I truly believe I am an alcoholic, it will turn out the same. It might be a question of how long, or maybe which jail I will end up in, or which attorney my wife will get for the divorce hearing. But that is the one thing I have come to believe by going to these meetings and hearing your story. It will turn out exactly the same. Is the key coming to meetings? For me, and I heard someone say it, the key is, are you an alcoholic or not? Because if I don't think I'm an alcoholic, there's no need to go to meetings. If I think I'm an alcoholic, then I will continue to go to the meetings, and I will continue to realize it will turn out exactly the same. And the progression of the disease will continue. If I go back to drinking, and for some bizarre reason I would have to ever tell my story again, it will be different. I know that. I've seen enough people in addiction. I don't want to end up like Uncle Bobby, because I will be the kind of a guy that I can't drink and drive, and I'm not going to stop drinking, so take the car. It's going to turn out exactly the same. You know, we really, really dance around God in AA. Now, I get it. For me, that has been a really, really important part of my personal recovery. This morning, we at the 7:30 meeting, they had think, and I shared. I find it interesting that there's 3 thinks in all that. Is it just for emphasis? And I thought, no. The first think is, what do I think about it? The second one is, what do you think about it? And the third one is, what does God think about it? There are 3 players in this game, folks. When I was drinking, there was one. I was self-centered, narcissistic, and pissed off all the time. And you know why I was pissed off? Because it interrupted my drinking. Dad, can you throw the ball with me outside? Not now. I'm drinking. I didn't say that. No, everything. You know, I was just angry about everything. And coming to AA, talking about spiritual principles, for me, to start to think about something other than me, changed my whole perspective. You know, there's that sign that says, "You are not alone." I like that sign. There's people. You know, I am not alone. But you know what else it also implies? You are not the only one. When I came to meetings, I would pray to God and I'd say, "God, please give me answers." So I'd go to AA. So I went to AA, and I would listen. And sometimes he talked about stuff that had nothing to do with what I was wondering about. And I think, well, this is kind of a waste of time. And then it dawned on me, I'm not the only one here. It was fundamental for me. I'm not the only one here. It's not all about me. And when I start to think about the God of my understanding, can we look at the big picture here? Can we look at the big picture here? And life is no longer a competition. When I was drinking, it's like, how can I pull this off? How can I, just leave me the hell alone, I used to do stuff around the house when my wife was working and I was drinking. If she'd leave me a list, I'd do that crap. Like half hour before she was here. You know what I'm talking about? Like, oh damn. And then I'd leave like all the laundry out. And it's like, I did all the stuff on your chore list. Now leave me the hell alone. Really? That's my relationship? Okay. There are other people out there who have needs and interests. And I was never there. I was thinking only of myself and my addiction, and AA has taught me to start to think about, what did they want? AA has also taught me to ask the question, what's really going on here? You know, when my wife comes home pissed off, it's not always something I did. It's gotta be. Because what else in her world makes her happy or sad? It must be me. You know, I've shared this before, and it's one of my favorite stories that my wife taught me. She seemed upset, and I kind of knew what it was about, and I bought her flowers. Oh, that did not go over well. She said, because now we are no longer talking about my problems. We are talking about how wonderful you are as a husband. I get that, okay? In other words, for me to start to figure out what's really going on here, and I think that's part of the step work that you go through here. You know, to finally sit down, notice the step doesn't say, make a list of all the stuff you did wrong. What is the exact nature? What is really going on? What is driving you? You know the old, if I'm upset, there's something wrong with me thing? Yeah, I never thought about that when I was drinking. It had to be someone else's fault. Prayer and meditation is, for me, how I communicate with the God of my understanding. I have other books too, and other organizations that I enjoy going to. But for me, the think is, what does God think about this? You know, when you pray about it, it's like, how important is it? Is there another perspective? Is there a bigger picture? Is there something else going on here? And boy, does that seem to diminish my petty little daily problems. So, I see people falling asleep here. There's going to be a test. Take out a piece of paper, number 1 through 10. I knew it was going to be bad because I hadn't even started talking. People were leaving. I'm gonna wrap it up, and you guys could do whatever you want. My story is uneventful from the standpoint of making a movie, the great American novel. Mine would be a pamphlet. But I believe I share this with everyone in this room. I was in isolation. I was lonely in a crowd. I was doing things I did not want to be doing, and I couldn't stop. My life sucked internally. And that's the last thing I want to leave with you. What took me a really, really long time to say, my name is Tim and I'm an alcoholic, is I didn't know what the criteria was. What are the metrics? Can you pick an alcoholic out in a lineup? Can you pick an alcoholic out based on their resume? Based on their financial spreadsheet? Based on their automobile? There's nothing external that indicates. And so my initial concept of an alcoholic was, oh, I used to think when I admitted I'm an alcoholic, they'd ask me a few questions. When did you get out of jail? What kind of scooter did you ride? How long are you going to be on probation? What kind of box you living in under the bridge? Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, the iconic movie crap about these are alcoholics. And that stereotype took me a really, really long time to say I can't be an alcoholic because. I remember getting a pamphlet at the Wilder building. You know, I was still thinking maybe I can drink, maybe I overreacted, maybe I can do this in safety. There were 12 things. And I don't even remember which one. Yeah, number 1? Yeah. 2? 3? Oh yeah. 4? Yeah. I don't know, like 7. No. Clearly I'm not an alcoholic. This disease is not discriminating. And it took me a really, really long time to realize that. And one of the things I do share with my students and the people that I work with is I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to a meeting. And they're like, say what? How can you still, you know, it's like if they ever found out you'd be unemployed. No, I'm an alcoholic. Because of the October 28th when I woke up and said, I need help. This has got to stop. And I want to thank each and every one of you for all of your presence, for the meetings I've attended, for the support. You know, we've heard it. It's a great group to be part of. It is a great group to be part of. Because when people talk in this room, we get it. When I was talking about laying in that bed, October 28th, waking up saying, normal people do not get that. My wife does not get that. And I thank the God of my understanding that she never will. I hope she never understands addiction. You know? My son gets it. Okay? I have other children that might not get it. That feeling of despair, yes, my story is boring. But I got to exactly the same place each of you did, in that this has got to be over. And I thank the God of my understanding that you were here tonight, that there are people at all of the meetings, and that I can be a member of AA, and hopefully achieve 2,105 days. Thank you.